welcome back to the studio. Today, I'm gonna get into part 2 of my podcasting pro tips series. If you're dreaming of starting a podcast but are overwhelmed on where to start, you're in the right place. In today's video, I'm following up to my part 1 vlog on podcasting tips and gear, which you could check out in the link below. Today, we're diving into the creative stuff. That's podcast concepts, titles, artwork, more gear, and edits. Let's start with part 1, the podcast concept. Now, the foundation of your home should not be built on sand. Spend some time here getting really clear and crisp on what you want to podcast about. What's your genre? Are you doing something educational? Maybe you want to do a comedy podcast or a pop culture one. And then think about what your podcast format will be. Will you be doing live interviews with guests in person or virtual using software? Will you be monologuing after you research a topic and write yourself up a script? Because it matters on how you're going to produce your podcast. Let's do a quick demo of the brainstorm I did for a niche podcast I've been the host of for several years, and it's called Clock Talk. So I'm gonna open a new podcast concept brainstorming doc and talk through a couple of these key components. When you think about a genre, you may want to back all the way up and think about what is the problem this podcast wants to solve, because this is gonna help anchor you in the purpose behind what you're going for. So the problem I set out to solve with Clock Talk was how to build software for lawyers that transforms how they work and do business. I like this because when I was working in corporate spaces for years, building software, I struggled on why it was so difficult. So this really resonated with something I was living. And I thought, if I start a podcast and bring on guests and ask them the questions where I'm struggling, I'm getting free advice. And also, if it's interesting, maybe it can help another person in this field. So I have a problem statement, and that informs some of the genre of this podcast, which is technology with a sub-focus of artificial intelligence, as it's all everyone's talking about everywhere, every day, every second. And again, my niche, technology and AI in the legal world. So that is law firms, big companies, or legal tech startups. My format, one-on-one conversations. I decided to make the format of this podcast 80% live conversations with some virtual peppered in here and there, which lets you get at a wider span of guests around the world without traveling to them. Another thing to decide when setting up the concept of your podcast is whether you're going to go audio only or do a video and audio podcast. There's a couple factors here to think through. Number one, who is your audience and where and how are they going to consume this content? My audience are corporate tech professionals or law firms, or they're entrepreneurs in tech startup. Now, these are people who are very busy. They're most likely going to listen while commuting or taking a walk or going to the gym as a way of learning. That informed me that I should index on audio format. Now, a few times a year, I do know that this audience happens to get together at different conferences around the world. And so while in person, if we had a videographer crew, we would capture video on 20% of the live podcasts. So if you're thinking about a video podcast, here are some factors to consider. Remember, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world behind Google. Maybe you want to monetize earlier through YouTube ads, or you want to practice getting good on screen, or know you already are good on screen. That said, you do have to consider the resources you have available to you in making a video and audio version of the podcast. Video is labor intensive. It requires its own editing. So consider time, resources, and the budget available to you to make your podcast. Let's get into part 2, the title of your podcast. You want something catchy or humorous, or maybe it's a play on words, or maybe it's something so literal and straight up. Whatever the case, you want to find something that is easy to remember, is quite simple or straightforward. Let's look through some really great examples of titles out there in the podcast universe. Okay, let's start with a great title called Ologies with Allie Ward. Ologies is a short, catchy, and brilliant title. Each episode in the concept of this podcast covers a different ology, like biology. It's a simple word that hints at endless curiosity. And it also lends itself to great artwork, which we'll talk about in part 3. I love this one and I've listened to it. No stupid questions. This is a podcast from the Freakonomics world. And this is a great phrase, no stupid questions. Why? It's so memorable. No stupid questions plays on the human insecurity of asking questions out of fear that you seem dumb. How many times have you heard someone ask a question and go, this may be a dumb question, but... And you have to reassure them it's not. Asking questions is amazing, and that is the concept and title of this podcast, No Stupid Questions. Let me tell you a story of the niche podcast that I host and how the title came about. Go with me on this. CLOC stands for Corporate Legal Ops Consortium. I know, it's a lot of jargony corporate words, and it makes you want to run for the hills, screaming in a bloody nightgown with a knife in your hand. We intentionally came up with those words so that we can name the organization something that sounds like an everyday object in life, a clock. So there was some branding and marketing behind the organization name. Now, about the podcast. One day in a board meeting, we were discussing the concept of the podcast and kicking around titles. I wanted to name it Off the Clock because it was something I'd be doing after hours, after work, and could have this nighttime studio radio feel where we're answering questions and people are calling in and it gets a little spicy. Thought the name would be really great. Someone more senior than me that I looked up to in the meeting jumped in with their idea and said, Clock Talk. And that just took my idea and punched it out of the room. Boom, I just went flying and I didn't debate it. Clock Talk's a good name. It rhymes. Cool. Pay no attention to this about. I did not write this. I would never say as I dazzle listeners. We're trying. Marketing. Part 3 gets at one of my favorite parts of the process, creating the artwork for your podcast. Now, artwork should be square in shape and 3,000 by 3,000 pixels. If you're not a graphic designer, think about using tools like Canva or even ChatGPT to generate an image with some concepts put into a prompt. Or if you want to use paid tools, you can opt for things like Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator if you know how to use those programs. I'm going to show you a little of the color theory and journey behind the artwork that was created for the Clock Talk. Now, early on, I took the Celine logo, I reverse engineered it. I found out what font it is and created this in Photoshop. So I wanted to keep it simple. And look, I was really busy trying to host this podcast and work my corporate day job at Netflix. I did not have time. So this worked. If we glitzed it up a little bit for our event in Las Vegas and came up with city-specific graphic design beneath. So we've even evolved now to our new logos, and it just looks great. On to part 4, where we're going to talk about more gear. Starting with some hardware, let's talk about some headphones. Now, first of all, I recommend you wear headphones when you first start podcasting. It helps you get used to the sound of your own voice, and believe it or not, hearing yourself that much will make you reduce filler words like These are some great headphones. These are by AKG. They're the 371s. I think they run around $120 to $150.
Nope.
A really high quality headphone. My personal favorite and another affordable option are the Audio-Technica ATH M50X. These are great headphones as well. You can also get budget versions of Audio-Technica or headphones by Sony. Lots of options in the $100 range. And finally, the reason you should use headphones when podcasting, at least, is to do a line test on all the mics plugged into your computer or your hardware device. A line test means everyone's volume is up on their microphones and you test that you can hear each one of them and that you get a balanced level of signal. I can't tell you how many podcasts I've recorded without doing a line test, and it turned out I wasn't recording at all. Don't make that mistake. If you want to do a portable podcast and skip the computer part altogether, you could invest in a multi-track podcast recorder, something like the Zoom PodTrack P4. This has 4 inputs and 4 channels, which lets you take your recordings and put them right onto an SD card. The Zoom PodTrack will cost you around $170. And now for some software suggestions. If you're recording your podcast virtually, take advantage of all these online services you can use to record, like Riverside FM, StreamYard, and Zencaster, to name a few. All of these serve as virtual recording studios and have each one of your guests recorded into an individual audio track. They also have editing options, the ability to turn on video and pull that down from the service as well. These are really great options for when you're connecting with your guests virtually. Now, if you're podcasting live, you're gonna need some form of software if you're using your computer, like GarageBand, which is free on any Mac computer, or licensed software options like Apple's Logic, Ableton, Adobe Audition, and many, many more. I've used all of this gear and software at some point along the way and recommend any of it. Our final tips, part 5, are on the edit and posting, the last mile of producing your podcast and putting it out there to the world. Now, if you're editing yourself in software, cool. Also, bless your heart, because editing is a lot of work. Some things I recommend you think about in the edit are: cut out spaces between breaking points. It makes your podcast move faster. Cut out filler language like and just and sort of. People might take a couple tries to answer a question, and you should cut those out. Finally, adjust your audio levels. You never know if someone you're podcasting with virtually's microphone wasn't picking up that strongly, and they might need a boost. My first few dozen episodes podcasting, I applied some light compression to my vocals in post-production before publishing. Now I use an editor, and I'm pretty sure he's applying some audio processing to my vocals as well. I recently switched microphones while podcasting from the Shure SM7B to the Neumann U87 mic, and I let my editor know. He's been in the industry for 25 years and knows all the mics really well, and knew exactly what to do to dial in the EQ of my voice to work with this piece of hardware. You can post and distribute your podcasts using a number of different options out there. They're called podcast distribution services, and for audio-only podcasts, they're offered by companies like Captivate, Buzzsprout, Podbean, Spotify for podcasters. If you're a video-first podcast, go straight to YouTube. There you have it, absolutely everything you need to know to get started podcasting. If you like this style of content, let me know, drop a like or a comment, and thanks for tuning in. I'll see you on the next one.